The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council fell silent as the vote concluded. The massive circular room housed representatives from over 200 species, each sitting in sections designed for their unique biology. Some needed water tanks, others required high-gravity seats, and a few floated in anti-gravity bubbles. Ambassador Krill of the Zentari Confederacy stood at the center platform. His blue skin glistened under the lights as he spoke through his translator device. "The evidence is clear," Krill said. "In just 50 years since discovering faster-than-light travel, humans have developed military technology that took most of us centuries to create." Murmurs spread through the chamber. A holographic display showed videos of human warships and weapons tests. The ships were smaller than those of other species, but moved with surprising speed and agility. "They reversed-engineered our medical scanners into weapons that can target specific organs," continued Krill. "They adapted our communication technology to disrupt ship systems. And most concerning, they've developed defensive shields we cannot penetrate." Captain John Miller sat quietly in the human observation box. He wore the dark blue uniform of the Earth Alliance with its silver trim and single star on each shoulder. His brown hair was cut short, and his green eyes carefully watched the Council's reactions. He made notes on his tablet but said nothing. "The humans evolved on a death world," said Ambassador Vox of the Hegemony. His insect-like form clicked its mandibles nervously. "Their planet has thousands of predators, extreme weather, and constant natural disasters. They spent most of their history fighting each other. War is in their DNA." More murmurs filled the room. Some representatives looked toward the human observation box with newfound concern. "I propose a formal warning to all Council species," Krill said. "No one should provoke the humans or interfere with their territory. They are not aggressive if left alone, but their response to threats is excessive." The Grand Arbiter, an ancient being from one of the first spacefaring races, raised a long, thin arm. "Does anyone speak against this proposal?" Surprisingly, one did. General Zark of the Draxian Empire stood from his seat. The tall, reptilian figure wore ceremonial battle armor covered in symbols of past victories. "The Council grows soft," Zark said. "These humans are primitives who got lucky with stolen technology. My empire has conquered dozens of worlds. We do not fear a species that only recently stopped throwing spears." Captain Miller typed something into his tablet, his expression unchanged. The Grand Arbiter's voice echoed through the chamber. "The warning is not a suggestion, General Zark. It is the formal position of this Council. The Draxian Empire acknowledges the Council's position." Zark replied with a slight bow that seemed more mocking than respectful. The vote was called. Nearly every representative raised their hand, tentacle, or appendage in favor of the warning. Only the Draxian section remained still. The warning was officially recorded. All Council species are advised to avoid military conflict with humans of Earth. Their defensive capabilities and response to aggression exceed standard predictions. Previous models of behavior for newly spacefaring races do not apply. As the session ended, Captain Miller left the observation box and walked toward the Earth Alliance embassy. Admiral Frank Porter waited for him there, his weathered face serious under his gray hair. "Well?" asked the Admiral. "The warning passed," Miller replied, "but the Draxians weren't happy about it." "Will they listen?" Miller shook his head. "I don't think so, sir." Their general practically laughed at the warning. Admiral Porter sighed. "Then we need to prepare. If they come for one of our colonies." "I know, sir," Miller said. "I've already sent the report to Earth. The defensive systems on our outer colonies are being upgraded as we speak." "Let's hope they're not needed," Porter said, looking out the window at the massive space station that housed the Galactic Council. "But if they are, then the Draxians will learn why the Council issued the warning," Miller finished. Outside, ships of various designs moved through space. Among them, a small Earth vessel prepared to depart, carrying Miller's report and a single message: possible conflict ahead. Stand ready. 3 months passed since the Galactic Council's warning. Life continued as normal on the small human mining colony of New Hope on Proxima Centauri V. The colony was home to just over 200 people who worked to extract rare minerals from the planet's crust. Commander Susan Ross stood at the observation window of the colony's main building. She was a tall woman with short blonde hair and eyes that missed nothing. Her blue uniform jacket was unbuttoned, revealing the standard-issue black t-shirt underneath. She sipped her coffee as she watched the miners return from their morning shift. "Commander, we're picking up some unusual readings," said Kevin Barnes, the young communications officer. His face looked worried as he stared at his screen. "What kind of readings?" Susan asked, walking over to his station. "Ships, big ones. They just appeared at the edge of our system." Susan put down her coffee. "How many?" "5. No, 7 vessels. They're not broadcasting any identification signals. Send an alert to Earth. Then activate the defense systems," Susan ordered. "This could be nothing, but I don't like unannounced visitors." The colony's small defense system powered up. It wasn't much, a shield generator and a few automated gun turrets, but it was enough to hold off pirates or deal with the occasional dangerous local wildlife. 30 minutes later, the first shots were fired. The ships were Draxian. Their sleek, reptilian-inspired designs were unmistakable as they entered orbit around Proxima Centauri V. They launched smaller attack vessels that headed straight for the colony. "All civilians to the shelter." Susan shouted over the colony speakers. "This is not a drill." The defense system activated automatically. Energy shields formed a dome over the main buildings while turrets tracked the incoming ships. The first wave of Draxian fighters broke against the shields like water on rocks, but there were too many of them. "We need to hold out until help arrives," Susan told her small security team. "Earth will send ships as soon as they get our message." Jack Wilson, her second in command, checked his weapon. "How long will that take?" "At least 2 days." Jack nodded grimly. "We'll do what we can." The battle lasted 16 hours. The colonists fought bravely, but they were miners, not soldiers. The shields failed first. Then the turrets were destroyed one by one. The Draxians landed troops outside the main compound and began to force their way inside. Susan organized a final defense in the central building. They barricaded doors and armed everyone who could hold a weapon. Children and elderly colonists hid in the deepest shelter. "Why are they attacking us?" asked Mary Kim, a geologist who now clutched a mining laser converted to work as a weapon. "We're just a mining colony." "Because they can," Susan replied. "They think humans are weak." The Draxians broke through the final door just after midnight. Their soldiers wore heavy armor that shimmered with energy fields. Their reptilian faces were hidden behind helmets with glowing red visors. "Surrender now," their commander said through a translator. "Resistance is pointless." Susan stood tall. "This colony is under Earth Alliance protection. Your actions are an act of war." The Draxian commander laughed. "The Earth Alliance is too far away to help you." The fighting that followed was brief but fierce. When it ended, 37 colonists lay dead. The rest, including Susan, were taken prisoner and loaded onto Draxian ships. As they were marched away, Susan caught a glimpse of Jack's body lying near the entrance. He had died defending a group of children. Light years away on Earth, Admiral William Carter was awakened by an urgent message. He read it once, then again. His face grew hard as stone. "Get me the president," he told his aide. Now, President Laura Mitchell was in the middle of dinner when the call came. She listened without interrupting as Admiral Carter explained the situation. When he finished, she closed her eyes briefly. "How many dead?" she asked. "At least 37 confirmed. 52 taken prisoner. And the Draxians. They're still there, mining our resources." The president's voice was calm but cold. "Prepare the fleet, Admiral. This will not stand." As she ended the call, President Mitchell looked out the window at the night sky. Somewhere out there, humans were suffering. The Draxians had made a terrible mistake. The Earth Alliance diplomatic vessel Olive Branch moved slowly through space toward the border of Draxian territory. It was not a warship. Its sleek white hull bore no weapons, and its shields were designed for navigation through asteroid fields rather than combat. This was by design. Ambassador Peter Garcia stood on the bridge, hands clasped behind his back. He was an older man with salt and pepper hair and deep lines around his eyes from years of difficult negotiations. His gray suit was perfectly pressed, and the Earth Alliance pin on his lapel gleamed under the ship's lights. "We're being hailed by the Draxian Border Patrol," said the communications officer. "Open the channel," Peter replied. His voice was calm and measured. The screen lit up to show a Draxian officer. His scales were a dark green with golden patterns that marked his high rank. "State your business, human," the Draxian said. "I am Ambassador Peter Garcia of the Earth Alliance. I carry a message for Emperor Vorax regarding the attack on our colony and the taking of our citizens as prisoners." The Draxian's eyes narrowed. "You will be escorted to Dracus Prime. Any deviation from the assigned path will be treated as an act of aggression." "Understood," Peter replied. "We come in peace." Two Draxian warships appeared and positioned themselves on either side of the Olive Branch. The small diplomatic vessel looked tiny between them. On Dracus Prime, Emperor Vorax waited in his throne room. The chamber was vast, with high ceilings and walls decorated with weapons and trophies from conquered worlds. The Emperor himself was larger than most Draxians, his scales a deep red with black markings. A crown of metal spikes sat upon his head. "The human ambassador approaches, Your Majesty," announced a court official. "Bring him in," Vorax said, his voice a low rumble. "Let us hear what these soft-skinned creatures have to say." Peter walked into the throne room alone. He showed no fear despite being surrounded by Draxian guards. He stopped at the designated spot before the throne and bowed slightly, enough to show respect but not submission. "Emperor Vorax, I bring a message from President Laura Mitchell of the Earth Alliance. 3 days ago, your forces attacked our mining colony on Proxima Centauri B. 37 of our citizens were killed, and 52 were taken prisoner. We request the immediate return of our people and reparations for the lives lost and damage done." Murmurs filled the throne room. Most were amused at the human's boldness. Emperor Vorax leaned forward. "Your tiny colony was in territory the Draxian Empire has claimed. The fact that you still breathe shows our mercy. Proxima Centauri has been recognized as human territory by the Galactic Council for over 15 years, Peter replied evenly. "Your attack violated not only our sovereignty, but also the Council's recent warning. The Council does not command the Draxian Empire," Vorax said, standing now. He towered over the human ambassador. "Your people are now subjects of our empire. If Earth wishes peace, you will acknowledge our claim to the Proxima system and pay tribute." Peter's expression didn't change. "That is not acceptable. Return our people and withdraw from our territory. This is not a negotiation. It is your one chance to avoid conflict." Laughter erupted throughout the throne room. Even Emperor Vorax joined in, his deep rumbling laugh echoing off the walls. "One tiny species threatens the Draxian Empire," Vorax said when the laughter died down. "An empire that spans 42 star systems. Your bravery borders on insanity, Ambassador." "It is not a threat," Peter replied. "It is a warning and an opportunity. We prefer peace." "Your preference is noted. Now leave before my patience ends. Your people stay with us." Peter bowed again, just as slightly as before. "As you wish, but remember this moment, Emperor Vorax. Remember that we tried diplomacy first." As the Olive Branch departed Draxian space, Peter sent an encrypted message to Earth. "Diplomatic solution rejected. Prisoners not released. Awaiting further instructions." Meanwhile, Lieutenant Kate Harrison moved silently through the shadows of a Draxian military base. Her dark uniform helped her blend into the darkness as she placed tiny devices on walls and under consoles. No one saw her enter, and no one would see her leave. But soon, Earth would know exactly where their people were being held. The Draxian security officer yawned as he checked the monitors. Nothing unusual ever happened during night shift at Prison Facility 12. The captured humans were kept in the lower levels, far from any possible escape route. He reached for his drink, then froze. The security system showed all clear, but he could have sworn he heard something in the corridor outside. The door slid open. The Draxian had just enough time to see a human figure before everything went black. Colonel Ryan Howard stepped over the unconscious guard and moved to the security console. He was a tall man with a shaved head and dark skin. His black tactical suit absorbed light rather than reflected it, making him almost invisible in the shadows. 3 other humans in similar gear secured the room. "Status?" Ryan asked quietly. "All guard patrols neutralized," reported Sergeant Lisa Moore as she worked on the security system. "No casualties on either side. They'll wake up with headaches in about 6 hours. Prisoner locations." "Got them," Lisa said. 3 levels down, East Wing. 52 life signs matching human patterns. Ryan nodded and touched the communicator in his ear. "Team 2 and 3, proceed to extraction points. We have 30 minutes before the system reset reveals our presence." Across the Draxian military base, 12 more humans moved like ghosts through corridors and access tunnels. They disabled cameras, planted devices on walls, and avoided patrols with perfect timing. None of the Draxians saw them coming. Deep in the prison section, Commander Susan Ross looked up as the cell door suddenly opened. She had lost weight during her 3 weeks in captivity, and her face was bruised from interrogation sessions. Yet her eyes still burned with defiance. "Who are you?" she asked as a figure in black appeared. "Colonel Ryan Howard, Earth Alliance Special Operations," Ryan said, handing her a small weapon. "We're here to take you home." Susan stared at the weapon, then at Ryan. "How did you find us? How did you get past their defenses?" "Lieutenant Harrison's intel was perfect," Ryan replied with a small smile. "As for their defenses, let's just say humans are good at being sneaky when we need to be. Can you walk?" "I can run if it means getting out of here," Susan said, standing up. Within 20 minutes, all 52 prisoners were free and moving through a maintenance tunnel that led to the surface. The weakest were carried by the rescue team. No alarms sounded. No shots were fired. 3 small human ships waited in a canyon 2 miles from the base. They were unlike any vessels the Draxians had seen before. Angular, matte black, and seemingly absorbing the scans that swept across them. "Everyone aboard," Ryan ordered. "Quick and quiet." As the last prisoner entered the 3rd ship, Ryan took out a small device and pressed a button. Throughout the base, the tiny objects placed by his team activated, releasing microscopic nanobots into the air. These invisible machines floated through vents and corridors, attaching themselves to weapon systems, communication arrays, and power generators. The 3 human ships rose silently into the night sky. No Draxian sensors detected them. No defense systems activated. They were halfway to the jump point when Ryan received a message from Earth. "Prisoners secure," he reported. "Mission accomplished without casualties. Ready for Phase 2. Admiral William Carter's voice came through clearly. "Excellent work, Colonel. Bring our people home. Authorization granted for Phase 2. Ryan looked at Susan, who sat across from him in the ship. "You might want to watch this," he said, activating a screen that showed a view of the Draxian military base they had just left. Admiral Carter's voice addressed all 3 ships. Nanobots activated. On the screen, lights throughout the Draxian base flickered and died. Defense turrets powered down. Communication arrays went silent. Ships on landing pads suddenly lost all power. Within 60 seconds, the entire Draxian military headquarters was blind, deaf, and defenseless, without a single Draxian life lost. "What just happened?" Susan asked, her eyes wide. "We showed restraint," Ryan replied. "We could have killed them all. But that's not our way. Not yet, anyway. This was just a message. As their ships jumped to faster-than-light speed, heading home to Earth, the Draxian base erupted into chaos. Emperor Vorax would soon receive reports that humans had done the impossible, penetrated their strongest defenses, rescued their people, and disabled an entire military installation without firing a shot. The message was clear. This was only the beginning. Emperor Vorax smashed his fist against the war table, sending holographic displays flickering. His advisors flinched at the display of anger. The Emperor's scales had darkened to a deep crimson, a sign of his rage. "How?" he roared. "How did they enter our most secure facility, take our prisoners, and leave without a single alarm?" General Draz, the head of military operations, bowed low. "The humans used technology we have not seen before, Your Majesty. Their ships absorbed our scans rather than reflected them. And the nanobots they left behind. Our scientists are still studying them." "I don't want excuses," Vorax said. "I want revenge. Prepare the Armada." The general looked up in surprise. "The entire Armada? For one small species? They humiliated us," Vorax hissed. "We will crush them completely. Show the galaxy what happens when someone challenges the Draxian Empire." 3 days later, 300 Draxian warships gathered at the edge of their territory. Each ship carried enough firepower to level a city. Together, they represented the largest military force in the known galaxy. General Draz stood on the bridge of the flagship, reviewing the attack plan one final time. "We will jump directly to the 4th planet in the human home system, what they call Mars. From there, we broadcast our demands. They will surrender immediately when they see our strength." The Emperor watched from his throne on the same ship. Begin the jump sequence. In perfect formation, the 300 ships disappeared into faster-than-light travel. On Earth, in a secure underground facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Nicole Bailey worked at her computer terminal. She was a small woman with curly red hair and glasses that kept sliding down her nose. Despite her youthful appearance, she was Earth's leading expert on quantum physics and had spent the last 10 years developing technology that most humans didn't even know existed. Admiral Carter stood behind her, watching as she ran final simulations. "Are you sure this will work?" he asked. "In theory, yes," Nicole replied, not looking up from her screen. "In practice, we've never tried it on this scale before. The Draxians have launched their fleet," President Mitchell said as she entered the room. 300 ships heading directly for Mars. Nicole nodded. "That's actually good news. Mars is the perfect location." "How so?" the president asked. "We've had quantum defense satellites around Mars for 5 years, Nicole explained. "It was our first full-scale test site." Alerts flashed across the screens. The Draxian fleet had arrived in orbit around Mars. "They're broadcasting a message," said a communications officer. "They're demanding Earth's immediate surrender, or they'll destroy every colony in our system one by one." President Mitchell's face hardened. "They attacked our people. They took our citizens prisoner. And now they threaten our home." She turned to Nicole. "Doctor, you have authorization to activate the defense grid." Nicole's fingers flew across her keyboard. Quantum field generators coming online. Targeting systems active. Time bubble formation in 3, 2, 1. In space around Mars, invisible fields of energy enveloped each Draxian ship individually. From the Draxians' perspective, everything outside their ships suddenly froze. Communications between vessels cut off. Weapon systems that were powering up stopped responding. On the flagship, Emperor Vorax watched in confusion as his display screen showed nothing but static. "What is happening?" he demanded. General Draz checked his instruments. "Our weapons won't fire. Communications are down. We can't reach any other ships." "How is this possible?" Vorax asked, real fear in his voice for the first time. Back on Earth, Nicole looked up at the president. "All 300 ships are contained in localized time dilation fields. For them, Time is passing thousands of times slower than for us. They're essentially frozen in place. Can they escape? Admiral Carter asked. Not with their current technology, Nickel replied. Each ship is in its own bubble. They can't communicate with each other or fire their weapons. President Mitchell nodded slowly. Now we send our response. A single Earth vessel approached the frozen Draxian fleet. The ship was small compared to the massive Draxian warships, but it moved with purpose. Its sleek design seemed almost artistic rather than military, with smooth lines and a silver-blue hull that reflected the light of the distant sun. Major Daniel Green stood on the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back. He was younger than most officers of his rank, with short brown hair and serious blue eyes. His uniform was simple, a dark blue jacket with minimal markings that indicated his rank. "We're in position," said the pilot. "All Draxian ships remain in time stasis except for their flagship. Dr. Bailey has released just that one from the field as ordered." Daniel nodded. "Open a channel to their flagship, visual and audio." The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the Draxian vessel. Emperor Vorax sat on his command throne, his scales now a mixture of red and black, colors that showed both rage and fear. General Draz stood beside him, trying to maintain his dignity despite the confusion evident on his face. "This is Major Daniel Green of the Earth Alliance," Daniel said calmly. "I have been authorized to speak with you regarding your current situation." "What have you done to my fleet?" Vorax demanded, his voice shaking with anger. "Your ships are currently held in localized time dilation fields," Daniel explained as if discussing the weather. "For your flagship, we've allowed time to flow normally so we can have this conversation. The rest of your fleet is experiencing time at approximately 1/1,000,000th the normal rate." General Draz stepped forward. "Impossible. Such technology does not exist." Daniel smiled slightly. "Yet here we are." He paused, letting the reality sink in. "Emperor Vorax, you have invaded our territory twice now. You have killed our citizens and taken prisoners. Despite this, we are prepared to offer you one final opportunity to retreat and negotiate peace." The Emperor's laugh was hollow. "You think having a few of our ships trapped gives you the advantage. The Draxian Empire has thousands more vessels. We will never surrender to primitive apes who just learned to leave their planet." Daniel's expression didn't change. "I was afraid you might say that. Please observe." He nodded to someone off-screen. A moment later, 50 of the Draxian warships simply vanished from space. On the flagship, alarms blared as officers frantically checked their instruments. General Draz stared at his displays in disbelief. 50 ships, gone. No explosion. No debris. They're just gone. Daniel's voice remained calm. "Those ships and their crews have been teleported into the heart of your system, son. They no longer exist." For the first time, real fear showed clearly on Emperor Vorax's face. "That's not possible." "The Galactic Council warned you not to provoke us," Daniel continued. "They understood what you did not. Humans evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every day. We spent thousands of years fighting each other, perfecting the art of war. When we finally found peace among ourselves, we turned those same creative minds to science and exploration." Daniel leaned forward slightly. "Every weapon you develop for war, we developed 10 for defense. We could destroy your entire fleet right now, but we choose not to. Instead, we will release your remaining ships with just enough power to return to your homeworld." The time fields around the Draxian ships began to flicker. Lights on the vessels dimmed as systems reset with minimal power. "Return home, Emperor Vorax," Daniel said. "Tell your people what happened here today. Explain to them that you gambled their lives on a war you could not win." The Emperor's voice was barely above a whisper. "This is not over." "For your sake, I hope it is," Daniel replied. "Because if you attack us again, there will be no more warnings, no more demonstrations, no more mercy." His voice became harder. "We could have destroyed you all. Remember that." The communication ended. Daniel watched as the Draxian ships slowly turned and limped away from Mars, heading back toward their territory. On the command deck behind him, his crew remained silent. They had just witnessed history, the day when the Draxian Empire, which had conquered dozens of worlds, retreated in fear before a show of human power. "Send word to Earth," Daniel said quietly. "The demonstration is complete. The Draxians are withdrawing." As his ship turned toward home, he hoped the message had been clear enough. Because if it wasn't, if the Draxians came back, the next encounter would not end with the demonstration. News of the confrontation at Mars spread quickly through the galaxy. Within days, the Galactic Council called an emergency session. For the first time in its long history, representatives attended virtually rather than in person. Many cited security concerns. None wanted to admit they were afraid. The Grand Arbiter's hologram flickered at the center of the virtual meeting space. "This session of the Galactic Council is now open. The matter before us is the conflict between the Draxian Empire and the Earth Alliance." Images appeared showing the Draxian fleet trapped in time fields and the 50 ships that vanished. The recordings had spread across every communication channel in the galaxy. "The humans have displayed technology far beyond what should be possible for their development stage," said Ambassador Krill of the Zentari. "The ability to manipulate time itself, to teleport objects across vast distances, these are theoretical concepts for most of our scientists." "They are monsters," shouted the Draxian representative, a minor official sent in place of Emperor Vorax. "They murdered 50 ship crews without warning. After you attacked their colony and threatened their homeworld," countered another ambassador. "The warning was given. Your emperor chose to ignore it." The arguments continued for hours. Some species called for sanctions against Earth for their excessive response. Others wanted to form alliances with the humans, hoping to gain access to their technology. A few suggested extreme measures, containment or even elimination of humans before they became too powerful. Finally, the Grand Arbiter raised a hand for silence. "We will hear from Earth's representative." The human who appeared in the center of the council was not a military officer or politician. Dr. Alan Ward was a history professor from a university in what humans called Boston. He was an older man with gray hair and a beard, wearing simple clothes rather than a uniform. "My name is Dr. Alan Ward," he began. "I am not a diplomat or soldier. I teach human history. President Mitchell sent me because she thought you might need context for what has happened." He walked around the virtual space, hands clasped behind his back like a lecturer addressing students. "For most of our history, humans fought each other. Tribe against tribe, nation against nation, ideology against ideology. While your species were exploring space, we were inventing new ways to kill each other." Images appeared: ancient humans with spears, medieval knights with swords, modern soldiers with guns, and finally, the mushroom clouds of nuclear weapons. "We nearly destroyed ourselves many times," Alan continued. "Each war taught us something. Each weapon pushed us to develop better defenses. By the time we achieved peace among ourselves, war had become a science that we had mastered through terrible necessity." He looked at each representative in turn. "When we finally looked to the stars, we hoped to find friends. Instead, we found more of what we'd left behind. Empires conquering weaker species, enforcing their will through strength. So you decided to become the strongest," the Draxian representatives said bitterly. "No," Alan replied. "We decided to become the most prepared. There's a difference. The weapons we used against your fleet were defensive systems, not designed for conquest." 50 ships and their crews might disagree. The Draxian shot back. Alan nodded sadly. "Those deaths were regrettable. But your empire sent 300 ships to destroy our world. How many billions of humans would have died if you had succeeded?" The council chamber fell silent. "We don't want war," Alan said. "We've had enough of it in our history, but we've become very, very good at it." The Draxians were warned, both by this council and by our ambassador. They chose aggression anyway. The Grand Arbiter spoke after a long pause. The Council will vote on two matters. First, sanctions against the Draxian Empire for violating our warning and attacking a protected species. Second, a formal apology to Earth for our failure to prevent this conflict. One by one, the representatives voted. The Draxian sanctions passed unanimously. The apology to Earth passed with only the Draxian representative opposed. As the session ended, many representatives approached Alan privately, asking for meetings with Earth officials. Some offered trade agreements. Others suggested defensive alliances. Ellen returned to Earth with a simple message for President Mitchell. The galaxy has noticed us now. For better or worse, everything has changed. 6 months after the Draxian retreat, ships from every corner of the galaxy arrived at Earth. Each vessel represented a different species from the Galactic Council. Some were massive, requiring special orbits to avoid affecting Earth's tides. Others were so small they could land in city parks. The occasion was historic, the first Galactic Peace Summit to be held on human soil. The location chosen was New Geneva, a city built specifically for diplomatic purposes on the shores of Lake Michigan. President Laura Mitchell stood on the main stage of the Peace Hall, watching as alien delegates filled the room. Her dark blue suit was simple but elegant, with just the Earth Alliance pin on her lapel. Behind her stood a group of people rarely seen at such events, the families of those who died in the Draxian attack on the mining colony. "Welcome to Earth," President Mitchell began when all were seated. 6 months ago, many of you feared us. Some still do. Today, we hope to begin changing that perception. Cameras broadcast her words to every corner of human territory and beyond. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched the summit unfold. "Humans are not conquerors," she continued. "We do not seek to rule others or impose our will. What we have created, the technology that surprised many of you, was born from our need to protect ourselves, first from each other and now from threats beyond our world." Ambassador Krill of the Zenturi nodded appreciatively. His species had been among the first to approach Earth with genuine friendship after the Draxian incident. "Today we open our doors to the galaxy," President Mitchell said, "not to show our strength, but to share our knowledge, our culture, and our hope for a peaceful future." Throughout the week-long summit, Earth revealed sides of humanity that the galaxy had never seen. In the mornings, there were serious diplomatic talks and technology exchanges, but afternoons and evenings were devoted to human culture, art galleries showing paintings and sculptures, concerts featuring everything from classical orchestras to rock bands, food festivals with dishes from every human culture. In one exhibit hall, Dr. Nicole Bailey demonstrated simplified versions of her quantum theories to fascinated alien scientists. In another, children from Earth schools performed plays and songs for their interstellar visitors. Even Colonel Ryan Howard participated, leading alien diplomats through a garden while explaining Earth's many environments. Most surprising to the visitors was the resilience of the human spirit. The families of those killed in the Draxian attack spoke not of revenge, but of hope that such conflicts could be avoided in the future. On the final day of the summit, an unexpected visitor arrived. A small Draxian ship requested permission to land. Aboard was not Emperor Vorax, but a newly appointed diplomat named Tarek. Unlike most Draxians, his scales were a calm blue-green, and he wore simple clothing rather than military dress. Security was tight as Tarek entered the Peace Hall. Many humans watched him with understandable suspicion. Commander Susan Ross, now recovered from her time as a prisoner, was among them. Tarek approached her slowly, hands open in a gesture of peace. "Commander Ross," he said through his translator, "I was sent to offer the official apology of the Draxian people, not our emperor. He still refuses to acknowledge his error, but many of us disagreed with the attack on your colony." Susan studied him carefully. "You're risking a lot by coming here against your emperor's wishes." "Some things are worth the risk," Tarek replied. "The Draxian Empire has existed for thousands of years by taking what we want, but your people showed us there are limits to that approach." Their conversation continued awkwardly at first, then with growing understanding. Others noticed and gradually joined them. humans, Draxians, and representatives from a dozen other species, forming a circle of cautious dialogue. The Grand Arbiter watched this interaction with satisfaction. Later that evening, the Council voted to amend its official warning about humans. The new version read, "All Council species are advised that the humans of Earth respond to aggression with overwhelming force. However, they offer friendship and knowledge to those who approach with peaceful intentions. Do not provoke the humans, but do not fear learning from them either." As the summit ended and ships departed Earth, carrying new ideas and perspectives back to their homeworlds, humanity took its place as a full member of the galactic community, not through conquest, but through a demonstration of both strength and wisdom.